BlizzCon is over, and what a weekend it's been. Some obvious announcements.
And here at BlizzCon, we're happy to announce Cataclysm is coming.
Some wild announcements.
Season of Discovery is vanilla WoW with a spicy twist. You're going to discover new secrets as you scour the world and find class-altering abilities.
And even announcements I didn't think I'd be interested in that were fantastic.
We call this storyline the World Soul Saga.
If you've watched this channel for any real length of time, you know me, waiting a couple of days before putting a video out about these kind of things is unheard of. This time I really wanted to just let the dust settle, take the time to think about what I really feel about all of these announcements, and now break them down for you. That, on top of the hangover I've had all weekend, probably also played a part. Let's break down everything we know from BlizzCon, and then in a video coming in the next 24 hours, we'll be looking far deeper into Season of Discovery, thanks to Wowhead's interview, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. I'm going to be focusing fully on the classic content, even though the retail stuff looks great. And actually, there's some bits I'd love to see make its way to classic, but I'm sure we'll get to talk about that very soon. So let's start with the obvious one that I think we all knew was going to happen. Cataclysm Classic. Now, it's no secret that I've been looking forward to this announcement. In fact, I've spent the last year leveling every character to level 85, refreshing my memory on all the raids, and getting ready to share what I know with all of you over the next few months. There is going to be more at play here than just simply getting a copy and paste of Cataclysm originally and now in a classic format. There's going to be some big changes, and I genuinely have more questions than I do answers at this point, but let's talk about what we do know. Cataclysm will be launching during the first half of next year, and my best guess would actually be it will sit towards the back end of the first quarter. If you look at the small print where you can go and buy the big upgrade pack now, it actually says August. Don't listen to that. There is no chance that that's right. It says on or before, so we know it's going to be long, long before. Some of the extra features they spoke about at BlizzCon for Cataclysm specifically was they're going to do Heroic Plus, which with the difficulty of the dungeons already in Cataclysm, it's actually going to be really interesting to see how they handle it. We know it will likely follow the Titan Rune style of difficulty throughout the expansion, but either way, I'll be excited to see how it actually looks by the end of it. With quite a smooth item level curve throughout the expansion, which I've spoke about before in videos, it is going to be interesting to see how they're going to handle that. Because when we get to the point where we're going to get Zul'Gurub and Zola Man, the item level in here is 353, which sits nicely between heroic 5-man content and 10-man normal raid content, or 25-man as well, 10 and 25. Same loot. So what extra rewards we're going to get from Heroic Plus, I just really hope doesn't damage the tier 11 raids in general. And what I mean by this is when we go into Firelands, if 5-man Heroic Plus starts dropping tier 11 loot, it's going to kill off tier 11 when actually it wouldn't do that if you still had to go and do the raids to get the gear, because some of the items are still really, really good. Now, I know what would probably happen is some of the normal versions of the gear would be in the 5-mans, and you still need to do the heroic versions to get the heroic gear. But either way, it's the one thing I'm a little bit worried about out of everything that's been announced. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to it, and as I say, a real even step up in difficulty in already difficult dungeons is going to be really interesting to see. I just hope it don't screw up the whole sort of progression path of your gearing. The next thing they spoke about was the guild advancement system. Now, if you don't know, you level up to level 25 in your guild, and there's some really strong rewards that you're going to get, such as mass res, mass summon, extra time on flasks if you're using guild cauldrons, which cauldrons are basically something that you would put down a bit like a feast. You'd put it down and everybody in the raid can take a flask out, and if you've got the appropriate guild levels, then it's going to give you extra uses from these cauldrons and extra time on everybody's flasks. But the biggest deal is the fact that if you want to level and you want your guild to level fast, you do have a much easier time the more people you've got, because there are daily and weekly caps on what you can actually do to gain experience, and you do have to do both PvP and PvE. So it'll be things like completing a raid for the week, completing several dungeons for the week, and even rated battlegrounds. So depending on the size of your guild, and if you're currently progressing in raids and stuff like that, it can make getting some of these challenges done, especially things like the RBGs, a little bit challenging. And also when people are completing dungeons as a guild group, you're getting XP, and basically, yeah, the smaller the guild, the more punishing it is. And they've already said that that is the one thing that they're like sort of focusing on, so they don't make smaller guilds be at a disadvantage, which I actually think is great. They also mentioned transmog and the fact that transmog's going to be account wide, so you can just collect all the items on alts and everything, and it's going to be the collections tab. So I think we already knew it would probably go down that path, especially with the addition of the heirloom tab and toy tab and account-wide mounts and all of that. A big focus as well is actually going on getting through Cataclysm a little bit quicker, which might sound counterintuitive, but actually it makes sense. In the grand scheme of things, it might look like you've got lots of raids to go and get stuck into, but there's not actually that many, especially when you count bosses, in like how many bosses there are across all of those raids. It should be quite a short expansion, especially when, if there was no changes, you can only do 10 or 25 man, which straight away is limiting the amount of raiding you'll be doing a week anyway. But I have a feeling that might change. But not only are we going to be going through the expansion quicker, the leveling speed is going to be increased from level 1 to 80. Now, this definitely makes sense on the basis that not only now can you get the upgrade packs, so when you buy the Blazing Heroic pack, you're going to get a flying mount, you're going to get a retail mount, you're going to get a Rathian pet in both games, you're going to get a transmog set, you're going to get a toy, and if you buy the expensive one, you're going to get a level 80 character boost and 30 days game time. So for £65, you're getting a level 80 character boost. Now, you're probably like, well, yeah, that's normal. We always get a boost. You're right. But on the basis they've gone all out and actually just added a level 80 character boost that you can buy as many times as you want, it kind of makes sense that the leveling is made that little bit quicker. £49 is quite expensive, but when you really think about it, that for some people would be days or even weeks of leveling to actually get to 80. So I feel like a lot of people are going to be buying boosts, myself included. So having the leveling speed that much quicker makes sense, because so many people will just be skipping the whole leveling experience and buying a level 80 anyway, that the leveling experience just needs to be as pain-free as possible. Now, I've been saying for weeks that I would expect more monetization options like this coming with Cataclysm, but I weren't expecting this much. 80 boosts, quite expensive upgrade additions. I mean, is it too much? But with that aside, what you might have noticed in the actual classic section of Blizzcon, if you was watching it, or maybe you was watching it live with me over on Kick, one thing that confused us was the fact that there's 10 new dungeons, which actually there's 12, but they are saying new, so they quite possibly might just be leaving Zolaman and Zul'Gurub off of that list. They're not new, they're just retuned for, well, level 85, and a 5-man instead of being a raid. But they've put 7 new raids. Now, are they actually adding some form of time-walking raid that we don't know about yet, or was it a typo? Because actually there's only 6 new raids. There's Bastion of Twilight, Blackwing Descent, and Throne of the Four Winds. This is your tier 11, and then obviously you've got Barradin Hold that gets a new boss each tier, which is basically our VOA of Wrath of the Lich King. Then you get Firelands, which is tier 12, and Dragon Soul, which is tier 13. Now, that's only 6 raids, but they've specifically said 7. So straight away, we're like, are we going to get something like Black Temple tuned for level 85, or Karazhan tuned as a 10-man for level 85, or is it just a typo? Let me know in the comments what you think. Surely they know how many raids are in their own game. Like I say, I could be looking into this far too much, but it does just seem strange that on a big stage, a big event like that, you would actually get something wrong. Surely they checked and double-checked and triple-checked everything that they was about to announce to millions of people watching live and at home. So, I don't know. There was also a Q&A with Warcraft Wiki, and quite a few interesting things was mentioned here, one of them being account-wide achievements. So actually the initial question was about merging retail and classic achievements, so you only need to do them on one version of the game. And they said it's not something they've considered, but cata achievements will be account-wide again. Now, if you go back to when the collections tab went live, there was lots of issues with achievements popping up that you didn't have on each character, and it all just seemed a bit of a mess. So it was kind of obvious that they was probably working on that in the background, but didn't want to say anything. Because I actually tweeted to Agron saying, are we going to get account-wide achievements? And he said it weren't in the pipeline. Liar, Agron. I'm only joking. But the good news is we will be getting account-wide achievements for Cataclysm. One thing that I personally know people that are not going to be happy about this, but I need to share it anyway, is Wrath moves on to Cata, and that is it for Wrath. Warcraft Wiki asked if there will be Wrath-era servers, and there's no plans for it right now. That doesn't mean it won't happen. Don't get me wrong, they might change their mind and go back on this, because I think a lot of people would enjoy Wrath-era servers. But at the moment, it looks like once we go on to Cataclysm, if you just want to play Wrath, kind of it for you. Again, if you haven't watched me on stream or you haven't watched many of my videos, then you probably won't know, but I am really excited for Mr. Pandaria. I know we're not even at Cataclysm yet, but Mr. Pandaria is one of those expansions that I absolutely love and genuinely am really excited to play a monk again. And if you're excited for MOP as well, then when they was asked specifically when does Classic end, they said we haven't drawn a line in the sand, it's too far out to see. People keep asking for MOP, we're driven by the direction that the players want to see. The survey that went out before Wrath Classic launched asked about Cata, and they got a lot of positive feedback. So, I mean, Cata is still months out, and they're already talking about Mr. Pandaria. Like, Mr. Pandaria was basically confirmed the second that they announced that Cataclysm was coming, because Mr. Pandaria will do far better than Cataclysm will do. Mop is a more fun expansion, but that is actually where I would say it's the stepping point to retail. Mop feels a lot more retail than Cataclysm does. That is just in my opinion. I know there's a lot of changes in Cataclysm that make you feel like it's getting closer to retail, but Mop really is that big jump towards retail, with the talents changing completely, where you've just got a choice of one of 3 every 15 levels. And that's not a negative thing. I enjoy it. I really, really like Mr. Pandaria and can't wait to play it in an actual classic iteration of it. But I would have thought there'd have been more reservations around Mop than there is Cata, but maybe I'm wrong. Outside of that, for Cataclysm, really, there's not that much we know at the moment. I am really interested to find out some more of these changes, and I'm hoping that I can even get Agrand on a call and ask him some of the big questions that I've got and then put it out to you guys, but we'll see. And then one that I think took everybody by surprise: Season of Discovery. So we had Season of Mastery, which was basically just vanilla again, but with some changes. Old mechanics brought into bosses, debuff limits removed. Nothing drastically different. Well, Season of Discovery is very different. And if you've heard of Ascension or played on Ascension, it is basically that. The thing I love about this announcement is that there's no PTR and there's no beta, so we are literally just going straight into a live launch with everyone having minimal experience, because the only people that are going to have had their hands on the game are the people who got half hour here or half hour there at BlizzCon. But it's launching on the 30th of November, and it looks like it's going to be really interesting. I've got to be honest, from my perspective, it looks like it's going to be a bit of fun. I'm going to play it, but I feel like it would more just be my game on the side rather than a primary focus. But I do feel like that's what it's actually meant to be, with the level cap being only level 25 to begin with, and then the level cap being raised every few months with new endgame content. I do think the majority of people will be playing this either alongside Classic Era, alongside Hardcore, or alongside Cataclysm. But it is absolutely wild. Ashen Val is going to be the PvP zone. Black Fathom Deeps is the first 10-player raid. You've got Warlocks that can tank, Rogues that can tank, Mages that can heal. You've got Ferals running around with Wind Fury. Staple abilities from future expansions, like even Crusader Strike for Ret Paladins being in there, and just so many mental abilities that you don't expect to see in a vanilla timeline. But the basic gist is you unlock runes and you attach these runes to your armor, which then give you these abilities. There is a full list of all the runes that we saw at BlizzCon, having things like Skull Bash as an interrupt from Feral Druids, and even having Savage Roar. It looks like all of the classes are just going to feel pretty bonkers to play. The raid, though, I get why it's Black Fathom Deeps. I just want to put it out there. Of course, it couldn't be Wailing Caverns, because that wouldn't really be that fair on the Alliance having to get there. So then it couldn't be Dead Mines, because that would be a bit harsh on the Horde. It had to be one of the zones that is the first sort of lower level zone where both Horde and Alliance go. So Ashen Val does make sense. It's just my opinion. I hate Black Fathom Deeps. I've never actually liked that dungeon, so I'd like to have seen it be anything else. But it is a completely new experience, even though the bosses look the same. And the whole point of Season of Discovery, like Josh said, is there's going to be so many hidden little things that you're going to find. It is all about discovering things both in dungeons and in the open world. Even from the Q&A, though, it does look like they are actually using this as an opportunity to see what they can do in the future. Many people are even considering Season of Discovery as a Classic Plus beta, where they really can play with new abilities. They can try and create some sort of class balance, but ultimately make vanilla feel like something new again. But it definitely looks like they're willing, and they're going to be adding content over the next several months. Because a quote straight out of the Wowhead interview was, "What I will say is that I think the outdoor world content that we're building in Ashen Val is more representative of what we want. We want there to be discoveries to encourage players to dig into these unknown places. We want to build on the existing lore and fantasy of zones and have more outdoor world content, whether that's PvP events or new world bosses. Maybe there's even new elites in certain zones or new events related to the fishing tournament." Obviously, the fishing tournament is definitely something that they've thought about, because they've specifically mentioned it from nowhere. So during this Season of Discovery, actually seeing brand new world bosses is not out of the question. One last thing I want to talk about when it comes to Season of Discovery as well: what happens to the normal raids like Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, AQ40, etc. What they said is, I think players will want to be able to express themselves as their character in these iconic locations. I think there's room for us to provide additional challenges in old raids, whether that's something we borrow from Season of Mastery or something new entirely. Ultimately, people want to be able to flex and show off their new builds, their runes, and show Ragnaros who's the boss. Those raids are still such an iconic part of Classic WoW, and we can't take those out. So as we progress through and eventually we are at that level 60 band, there is going to be a lot of stuff to do, and it's going to feel, even though you're going to be doing the same things you did before, let's face it, they don't even need to change Molten Core. I don't know, let's say because of the power of new abilities and stuff like that we've got, they might need to increase their health or something like that. But ultimately, it's going to feel very different anyway, just because of how all the classes play, synergize, and, well, let's face it, having a rogue or a shaman tanking molten core, that's going to be pretty insane. There's going to be a lot more to cover on Season of Discovery, though. As I say, I'll be breaking down all of the interviews over the next 24 hours, so be sure to look out for those. And just for you hardcore classic players out there, they have actually announced the solo self-found mode as well. So solo self-found is basically just you. You cannot use the auction house, the mailbox, you can't trade, there's no turning it off. It's just you're going solo self-found, you can't trade. It's the sort of original hardcore WoW community mode, if you like. And I'll be honest with you, they're probably the biggest things. Cataclysm Classic is coming. Season of Discovery looks really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to the 30th of November to really start getting involved and seeing what some of the crazy stuff is that we actually find out over the next few months. And yeah, there was that just minor little update for Classic Hardcore. Be sure to like and subscribe. Consider joining the channel as a member. Just click that join button down there and you can join these hundreds of other people that have joined the channel. And scrolling along the bottom down there, I struggled speaking then. It must be the excitement. And I'll see you on the next one.